The question has been posed to me by Anna very generously. Why do I write poetry? And it's something I think about a lot. It's actually a huge part of my approach towards poetry is questioning the meaning and purpose, because in real terms, in multiple levels, really, I'm generating vast volumes of ludic, complex text that almost no one reads. So it makes a lot of sense to ask the question whether it's pointless or purposeful. And of course, that's all about approach. It's meaningful to me as an individual, and it's also incidental. I fell into poetry by chance and then gained some sense of esteem and enthusiasm for it around a community of people around the experience of publishing books and performing. And so, of course, in my daily life, though it might be a giant accident, there's a vast amount of joy and pleasure that I get in that kind of work. And so I see it as a job that has brought me quite a lot of joy. And that's what I do. I look inwards. I don't try to please anyone else or write for the gallery, just do what I want to do, and actually learn as a poet and an artist to break down anything that would get in the way of me knowing my own instincts and authentic desires and expressions, whether it's flippant visual poetry that's made of stickers or whether it's complex, dark, language-based work. Because outside of that, I have to recognize that my work is meaningless in the grand scheme of things. It makes almost no impact. It doesn't really inspire many people. And of course, you can't make judgments about value around your work based on populism, how popular it is, how successful it is. That's a ridiculous and negative way of thinking. But at some deep level, I'm also very suspicious of poets who would give our art form an almost metaphysical power that it just doesn't seem to have, in my opinion. The idea that it inspires people or makes them better is just as bad an idea as saying, as I'm often inclined to do, overstating that poetry is completely meaningless, and that's why it is good, because it has no meaning, and because really poetry changes people's lives when the individual applies themselves to it, in the same way that a poem can only really be that meaningful if one is attentive and generous to the poem. You can't take it in by being passive, as you can many popular forms of entertainment like films or music. So maybe I'm more worried about the people who walk around saying poetry is inspiring, it's amazing, without going into the fine details of that, because they're often promoting poetry that doesn't really change people's minds or hearts or souls, or whatever you would say, because they're quite banal. So the why for me is probably just accidental. And if there is an incidental or an instrumental reason, like a fundamental reason, it isn't because of my ability. Obviously not. It might be something to do with my genetics. I'm very linguistic, as you can tell from this video. I waffle a lot. I like language. I play with language. It fascinates me at a level which I would not say too often. And that could have been applied in different fields too. I could have been a salesman or whatever, a chef, a gardener, and I would say the same about how important it is. So I worry about that, and so I think day to day I do poetry just because I have been doing it, and because the people I've met have been mostly extraordinary, and that's a fact. You know, most people I've met in poetry have been wonderful and supportive, and I enjoy the process, and I love publishing a book and collaborating and making new ideas come into reality, even if they are sent out into the world in a small space.